Today we are going to talk about introduction to strategic supply chain management or supply chain strategy in learning with ISRAR YouTube channel. So let's see what is strategic supply chain management is and how we develop a supply chain strategy. Let's first define what strategic mean is. It is the identification of long-term or overall aims and interest and the means of achieving them. So it is a way in which an organization decides what it wants to achieve and plans actions and use of resources over time to do this. So basically in strategic we are setting the direction of an organization. So what is the strategy? A strategy is a set of guiding principles. Those are communicated and adopted in an organization to generate a desired pattern of decision making. As such, a strategy is just one element of overall strategic decisions that leaders must define for their organization. So this is the definition of a strategy. So it is basically the set of principles. By following those principles, we achieve our strategic objectives of that particular organization. So after defining strategic and strategy, let's define what supply chain management is. Supply chain management, as we know, is the handling of an entire production flow of a good or services, starting from the raw component all the way to delivering the final product to the consumer by creating a supply chain. So a company basically creates a network of suppliers linked in the chain and that move the product along from suppliers of the raw material to those organizations that deal directly with user. A supply chain is basically a network between a company and its suppliers to produce, distribute and specific product to the final buyer. The supply chain also represents the steps it takes to get the product or service from its original state to the customers. So we know the definition of supply chain management. It is basically taking the product from its origin to the end customer or consumer. So what is supply chain strategy? A strategy for how the supply chain will function in its environment to meet the goals of the organization's business and organization strategies. So basically, supply chain strategy is the way in which we are going to achieve the organizational and business strategies. So it is aligned with the business and organizational strategy. So before building a strategy for a supply chain, we must initially identify our corporate strategies, like I already explained you in the previous slide, and how our consumer perceive value from our product or servicing offers. So it's both way. What is our corporate business strategy and what are the our customers are looking for. So what we are offering to them. Basically, we are identifying why consumer buy our product or services over that of our market competitors. So supply chain strategy, we're discussing value that can be derived from our supply chain. So a supply chain strategy which deliver the value, simply, bottom line is that a supply chain strategy is which deliver the value to our customers, keeping our mission and objective as well. We know that usually business organizations are identified with either they are cost leader or differentiator or offering new or existing exciting products, or the third one is like focused on a particular area or on a product. So when the corporate strategy is defined, this will cascade into functional area of business where each function will set their strategy that is aligned to the corporate strategy. So once we identify ourselves that what our company's mission is or what is our main vision is or what we are going to do, either we are cost efficient or we are giving the different product or we are focused on some area or on some product. After that we will this thing will cascade to the other area of the function, and our daily functions will be determined or trigger from these our identification of our organizations. So let's take one example, the supply chain strategy. That supply chain strategy may be set for an example as we aspire to reduce waste in our supply chain activity to support the company's strategy to be a cost leader in our market. So we want, our identification is that we are the cost leader in the market. Once this strategy is determined for the function, it will influence daily operations decision like I already told you. So let's see how it works. So supply chain strategy as a cost leader in the procurement, for example, in procurement we will be focusing more, our focus will be on driving cost out of the procurement activity by sourcing supplier with the favorable terms, negotiating quality improvement and reduced waste activity or stronger contractual terms. So in procurement strategy, our base will be to have a best cost since we are the cost leader. Operation may look to remove the waste from the existing process. So we are always trying to be more efficient in our operation by removing the waste in our operations. So logistically, we may look to invest in the equipment or in the facilities to support the removal of the waste activity or review their operational process for optimization. So we go for optimization in all our logistic activities. So after giving an example of supply chain strategy, let's see what are the main characteristics of an effective supply chain strategy. So we need a strong leadership, we need a sound design of the supply chain, we need a very flexibility in our supply chain, and then we have horizontal process, mean we have to cross-functional involvement in our supply chain. Then our focus should be more on customization, and we will always look for the improvement in our strategy. So these are the main characteristics of a supply chain strategy. So the next phase is that how we develop a supply chain strategy. To develop a supply chain strategy, there's a need to be two-way communication between functional and operational aspects of organization upward to the senior leadership who determine the corporate vision, strategy and mission, and vice versa. The best example is the strategic pyramid. So we develop the supply chain strategy using the strategic pyramid model. So what is the strategic pyramid? You can see from the in the slide that it start from the top, mission, vision, then mission, then what is the value of the organization, then goals, and then we make strategy, and then we make an action plan to achieve that. So this is basically a model to develop a supply chain strategy. Here you can see a supply chain strategy development framework. So this start, if you look at the bottom, so supply chain strategy have like 6 different things coming. What is our customer requirement, what they are expecting from us, that what internal capabilities we have, then what are the supply chain trends, what are the new technologies or technology, and then what is the competitive analysis, and then what are the risks. So these all things influence on our supply chain strategy development process. Then we see for the new supply chain capabilities what we need, the new things. Then we have supply chain organization, people and performance indicators. We could have the what kind of organization we need, what kind of people we need, and what kind of performance indicator we should have to see that if our supply chain strategy is successful or not. Then business case and organizations buy-in. Then if we need anything, then we have to present our business case to the top management and to have those resources available, and then execution of the thing. So this is a framework of developing a supply chain strategy. So let's explain a little bit this framework. Once we have awareness of the corporate strategy, then you can undertake the SWOT and the STEEPLED analysis to identify micro and macro factors that impact our supply chain activities. So we do the SWOT analysis. You can see from the what is our strength, weaknesses, opportunities and threat, and then also in environmental analysis about the social, technical, economic, environmental, political, and legislative, and ethical, and demographic. These all factors we will analyze to develop our supply chain strategy. As we were discussing about the SWOT and STEEPLED analysis, there are some micro factors which are internal to our organization. For example, you may have a shortage of specialized skills in your labor force. There's a limited availability of gap. This skill set within the recruitment market. So macro factors external to your organization, such as global disruption that may impact your raw material supply, like we have a COVID-19 pandemic nowadays. So we have to see our internal analysis and also external analysis, and then develop a strategy to meet all these challenges or our plus points. So as we have discussed, our core areas in development of supply chain strategies are people, process, and system. Do we have right number of staff with the right skill sets? Then process, are there waste activities within our current operating process? So we have to go through all these things. Then what kind of system we have? Our system enablers to strategy or to legacy system holding you back. So do we have system enablers which will help us, or do we have some system legacy which are going to hold us back and stop us to implement supply chain strategy? Next step is the implementing a supply chain strategy. To implement a supply chain strategy, once you have undertaken the analysis, will require building business case, like I explained you in the supply chain strategy framework. To gain investment for the area requiring development, then stakeholder buy-in, that we have to gain the support of all the stakeholders which are involved in the our supply chain management. Then setting the KPIs for for our performance measurement. So these are implementation of the supply chain strategy. So after discussing the supply chain strategy is development and implementation, let's talk about different kind of top supply chain strategies. Some are demand driven, then agile, they are more responsiveness, and then competency, flexibility, and quickness. Then product design optimization, and then align with the business goals, and then sustainability, embedded supply chain, then emerging technology adopted supply chain. So these are the few of the top supply chain strategy which you have which we have selected, which you will be going to select according to your environment. So as we know that strategic supply chain management is the management of the top management. So these are, and what kind of decisions they do when they are doing strategic supply chain management is like selection of products development strategies, identifying key customer segment, selection of manufactured technology, facilities location, in-house or outsourcing, buy or make, selection inventory management strategies, setting guideline to develop manage the suppliers relationship management, then development of the design and operational network of logistic, including warehouses, distribution centers, and transportation. I have a full presentation on this particular strategic decision supply chain management, and I'm going to put in that link in my description. This was a basic and a brief presentation about the strategic supply chain management and how we develop the supply chain strategy. So if you have any question, please feel free to ask me, and again, thank you for your time and listening.